right. Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode for the Leaders of Aviation Podcast. Super excited to bring you our first aviation collaboration podcast. Man, that was a big word, huh? Big word.
But you did it so well, though. I just got to say, you have a very upbeat, good podcasting voice. You know, you bring some bounce to it, good cadence, as it were.
Appreciate it. So as y'all have heard, I am joined by the Canceled for Maintenance crew. They go by their call signs 6 and MVP. Guys, welcome and thank you for making this happen.
Thanks for inviting us, Jeff.
And for everyone else out there, look, from our end, so this is kind of going to be our collab, co-release. So you'll hear this on both sides of our channels. I'm sure the audience is basically going to be the same, but in case there's some gaps in there, we're hitting all lines of view here, or fields of view. And for everyone else, the Leadership in Aviation Podcast is hosted by Mr. Jeff Lively, who is also an aircraft mechanic, and you're also running a business to help out people become pilots, right? Giving the FAR aid manuals with tabbed references for all their tests and for their general knowledge. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It sure is. But we've been blessed to have helped over 5,000 pilots across the nation as of this recording, and super excited to help thousands of more on their their own aviation journeys. So thank you. Excited to make this happen. And as you did mention, I am an aircraft mechanic. Well, an Army aircraft mechanic on the Apache AH-64 series. Been in for about 7 years, going to be getting out this year. But super excited to connect with y'all. And also, we were talking pre-show and y'all have done some pretty incredible work as well. And so I'm excited to dive in and get to know y'all more as well.
Well, I've done some work. I don't know if it's incredible per se, but it's been work regardless.
For sure. I'll tell people, man, I work on the Apache, and they're like, whoa, that is so cool. But like, I know y'all understand. Y'all have done way cooler things than that, but okay, excited to get started and rocking and rolling into it. So 6 and MVP, go ahead. Whichever one of you would like to start. How did you get into aviation?
Go ahead, 6, kick it off.
So I originally didn't fall into the aviation realm right away. I did a lot of side gigs here and there all throughout my time in high school, and just shortly thereafter, I did a lot of car mechanic stuff, mostly just mom and pop shops. And then I did some stuff doing telephone work, installing telephones. And around that time, wireless internet started to become a thing, very rudimentary wireless internet. And then around those times, it just wasn't clicking. There's stuff to do, but it just wasn't that big of a challenge. And around that time, I just signed up to join the Marines. This was I was around 17. So I actually had to get my mom's permission. That's a whole different story on that one. But when it came time to pick my job, they were like, okay, what do you want to do, 6? Well, I like to do, if I'm going to join, I want to do Marine stuff. So I signed up to be a grunt. And right before my shipping time was coming, they said, yo, we don't have any more spots to be grunts, so you need to do something else. And that's when I said, well, I like working with my hands. I like having a challenge. I like being given opportunities to find new solutions to current problems. So I picked aviation maintenance, and it's been that way ever since. I think actual wrench time I've had on planes was about 17 years. About 17 years I've been turning wrenches, and it's mostly been on Cobras and Hueys, the predate to the Apaches, which you're used to, but similar problems. And then as I progressed in aviation, that's when I started gaining more skill as to what goes behind the scenes. I have done stuff with maintenance control, and then now I do quality assurance stuff to make sure people's procedures, processes, and plans are all in line and are following with what the requirements are, whichever entities requirements those are. I hope I hope I didn't get too long winded on that one.
Oh, that's awesome. That's what's up. So awesome. MVP.
Yeah. So for me, so I got out of high school and was ready to be done with high school, but I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to go to college. I mean, I kind of did, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I, at the time, right, wasn't ready to just bury my face in more books for another 4 years. So in the summer between graduation of high school and eventually going to A&P school, I was doing plumbing and electrical work, and I became the ditch witch, or I had to put on the waders and go through sewers. I didn't get the glamorous jobs. I got, and that was purposely done, right? The boss gave me the literal shit jobs to ensure that I would go to school. So late one night, and my dad, was hounding me. Hey, all your friends know where they're going. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I saw a late night infomercial for my A&P school, and I said, I'll do that. Growing up, I always wanted to be a pilot. Joke's on me. I still haven't got that license to this day, but still something I'd like to do. But so I went to different branches of the military, wanted to go fast, like all of us did when we were little. But back problems pretty much put an end to that. I asked about flying helos, wasn't smart enough. I said, what about heavies? And they said, meh, we don't really have that. So my cousins who are currently in the military, they were like, hey, if you don't, they said, well, we can start you out over here and then you can do an internal transfer. And they said, don't sign up for that. You don't know what you're getting into. I said, okay. So I didn't sign up for it. End up I said, well, I guess the next best thing is to work on it. So I went to the school, got dad off my back, and did A&P school, came out of it with the license and a degree. And then from there, got linked up with my first job. And at the time of looking for the jobs, I said, I want to go as far away from anything that I know and from people that I know, and to a place that none of my family had ever been. So I ended up in the Southwest in California. Been here pretty much ever since, although a couple of moves back and forth across the country in between. Came out, started working UAVs and deployed all over the world with those. Seen a lot of cool things, was a part of a lot of cool things. I tell a lot of people that now, like, hey, what did you used to do? And my common response is I used to do cool things. But so since then, I got out of that and I went and worked when I started having a family and kids were growing, and I didn't want to be gone as much anymore. So I started doing AOG maintenance on corporate jets. Now it's still a lot of travel, but you're not going to a lot of rough and bad places. So I did that, traveled all over Canada, US, Mexico, and the Caribbean, chasing private jets around. And then eventually I got a call up from another company to go work spaceflight systems. And so I did that for a time. That was pretty interesting. It's just everything leading up to that point, and then kind of getting to there and seeing what flight characteristics are like in zero gravity situations. That was pretty neat to see how everything operates and applying what you know to that, or what you thought you knew to that. And then that company ended up moving on to another location. And at the time that just didn't work out. That move didn't work out for family life. So I switched it up to become a maintenance control back at my original place that brought me out west. And that's where I ended up meeting Six at. And we worked together there. And that's how we got the idea. Well, he got the idea. We would have these conversations every day at work. And he goes, man, we should record some of these. These are pretty good. And that was the birth of the Canceled for Maintenance podcast. And that's how we got started. Since then, he and I have moved on to different places of work, but similar job. So I'm the current working in QA manager. And like Six said, just going through and verifying everybody's following process procedures, being safe, My big thing is the being safe one. I kind of harp on that one more than anything. I tend to let a lot of the little stuff slide. I'm pretty relaxed when it comes to being quality. But if it's like a safety violation, that's where I'll come over the top a little bit. I don't want people getting hurt. So, and that's where I'm currently at. Again, a little long-winded, but that's kind of my story.
Love it. Awesome. Hell yeah. So, man, there's a lot to digest and untackle there. So, Six, you mentioned when you were first getting started, you were working a lot of side hustles. Was that just kind of like on your own, or is that were you doing like businesses on your own, or what did that look like before you joined the Marines?
Oh, so it was mostly just like learning to learn. A lot of mom and pop stuff that I helped out was like a family member or a friend of a family member, and they usually come around and ask like, "Hey, we need some help." Doing this, or they would come and ask, "Hey, do you want to go overhaul this engine or something like that?" Like, heck yeah, I do. And it was either that or play sports. And I only played one sport out of the year, and it was over within the first quarter, which was football. And once that was over, like, well, I got nothing else to do. I'm not part of any clubs or anything like that. And my school didn't have an auto body shop program, which I don't see why they didn't, but they didn't. And that was just a way to keep me busy. It kept me out of my house. It kept me from just blowing my brains on video games 24/7, which I still do. But it gave me something to do, and it never that passion was still there to fix things. And what really drove me to it was I was able to troubleshoot stuff, like figure out what the problem is and how to find the solution, even though it's not readily there. And those mom and pop shops, they didn't have any actual manuals, or the manuals they had were very outdated. So majority of what the air quote manual was just whatever someone remembered in their steel trap of a brain. So like, what do we do? Like, I don't know.
For sure. Yeah. I remember growing up, my grandpa, he was similar to that mindset in terms of, he would literally just take a random push lawnmower, take it apart and put it back together, for no reason per se, just more so of wanting to know how the mechanics of that machine worked. And I can't say I had that desire as well, but I will say that I know being maintenance minded is it's a unique skill set that a lot of people I don't think fully understand. People probably relate maintenance to just going into the car shop and they do whatever they do in the car shop, but then aircraft maintenance, aviation maintenance in general, is a whole nother beast that a lot of people don't fully understand. Like with the airlines and when there's maintenance delays, sometimes, yeah, sure, it's ludicrous and, the airlines just make whatever up. But a lot of times it's actually a serious issue that could be a flight safety hazard, right?
Right. And like you just said, like when it comes to aircraft maintenance, it's not like you just pull into a shop and just let it go and then it just magically becomes better within the span of an hour to 3 hours. Some of these maintenance tasks, like they're driven by certain directives, certain regulations. Or there was like a notice that came out saying like this part is now bad, or these parts tend to fail after so many hours, so look out for this. And then it just so happens when you pull up that regulation or that safety message that every single part that you have is coming due or close to due to that message. And so now you got to slowly start to figure out, okay, how do we schedule this in such a way to do all this required maintenance and not affect the overall schedule of things? And then that's when it kind of runs into those issues, and everyone here is at some point in time have seen it where you're stuck at the gate, it's delayed for whatever reason, and you get that random snide comment that says like, well, how long does it take to change the tires? How long does it take to change the brakes? Or what now is broken? Like, I mean, it's not like a car where you can just pull over to the side of the road and check your tire pressure levels or jingle the spark plugs cables a little bit to get it working again.
Right.
Like, I mean,
well, what a lot of people don't realize is half the time of the job is actually the paperwork aspect of it. Because you have I mean, I know from my experience, right, working in the FAA realm, you go to change a tire. All right, it takes depending on the size of the jet, but it takes you 20 minutes to swap out a tire. And it takes you another 40 to do all the paperwork because you need copies and triplicates and of the aircraft logbook needs triplicates, one that's staying in the book, one for your copy for your work order, and then the other one that you send back to wherever home station is or maintenance control is at for that particular operator. You have to send it back to them and they have to review and approve prior to releasing you to flight. So a lot of that's due to that, right? The job didn't take very long. It's the backside, the desk work.
Yeah, for sure. I remember I was flying and I was coming back to Waco from, I think it was military training once. And long story short, there was a maintenance issue and supposedly it was fixed, but it had to be signed off. And the guy that could sign it off was like 45 minutes away. So there was a delay that we couldn't legally fly. And I found that interesting. So to kind of lead into that side of things too, is in the maintenance side of aviation. So I have a very basic understanding of maintenance. So, if some of the questions are kind of off base, please forgive me. But with maintenance, is there kind of like a, that entry level A&P, they do the work. And then there's another, maybe like a supervisor or as y'all, what y'all currently do now, maybe like a quality assurance side to where y'all are the ones that come in and do the paperwork end of things and check off that the work was done properly.
So as from the quality aspect, I might be there as they're doing the job, just verifying that they got the right task open and, they got everything, the calibrated tools are current and not expired or whatever else. But what I will do is I'll go back and check logbooks. I might go check it a week later, 3 days later, whenever, a month later. But if I go back and find that an indiscretion there, then that will fail that and they got to rectify it and everything else. Might not be on the spot. And then from the maintainers side of it, so as you're an entry level mechanic, come in and typically you'll be working. So say I'm entry level and Six is our seasoned mech. He's the lead. He's the shop lead. You might work directly with him for a time, and then he'll be buying off your OJT or on the job training forms for various tasks that you've been doing on the airframe or engines or whatever else. And then once Six feels I'm comfortable to do those jobs, like I said, he'll buy that off. And then eventually I'll move on to that next level where I'm not, I can work on my own, but I can't sign off the inspected buys. I can only get first signature, the corrected buy aspect of it. And then Six would still have to come behind me and verify my work and then get the inspected buy. And then eventually over time and getting experience, you'll eventually move into that same level where Six is currently at, and then you can you're the one who is training the new guys and buying off work.
Yep, and it really depends. Most organizations are set up that way. For the military, it's a little more cut and dry. Like you got level ones, or sometimes they'll call them entry levels. Then you got level 2, 3, and 4, and they all have like their different permissions, say to sign off stuff like. Entry level guys are not capable of signing off engine runs, or unless they're certified to do it. There's like little nuances here and there, but like what MVP was saying, like you get just because you have an A&P license doesn't mean you're certified to work on our specific plane. I mean, you can, right? And it all depends on what shop or what organization you're with, if they'll allow you to work on that. And there's a different title for that. I think it's part 1. What was that? Bridge my gap here real quick, MVP. When
you got your part 91s, your part 145s.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. So like that, those is that kind of covers entry level guys for doing those work. And that's kind of also their air quote second signature, if I'm correct on that one, MVP.
Yeah. So if you're working under a 145, you're essentially buying off the work as the 145, right? So the good part about that is you're sort of protected, right? So if something happens or you're found to have done something not to code or to the book or whatever else, the 145 takes the hit, not your direct license. Now, I've watched guys on the ramp, get spot checked by the local FAA inspector, and the guy was found to be doing some shady work, and they cut up his card right in front of him, never to get his A&P again.
Wow.
Right.
So yeah, it's pretty serious. So the good side of the 145 is you're protected a little bit, rather as if you're just working to your straight off your A&P, which I've done both sides of it, and you got nothing to worry about as long as you're following procedure. It's not a problem.
Right. And then the quality of it all, depending on the organization, quality is kind of like your buffer step before a government entity gets involved. So like with Part 145, you have your quality assurance guys or inspector authority guys. They'll be the ones checking your work, making sure it's valid, it's correct, it's to code, it's up to specification. And that way and if there's something wrong, they'll be the ones to check you before, say, the government comes and starts cutting up licenses and stuff. So if you're going to get in trouble, it's better to get in trouble by your in-house quality or your in-house inspector authority than a government entity who has all the rights and privileges to revoke your license forever.
Yeah. So for like in Six and I's current situations, right? He is the government and I am the private sector. And so my whole job, that's what I tell people. I said, my whole job is to stay ahead of him. Right. I got to catch all the stuff before he catches it. That's my sole purpose. Obviously keeping people safe and make sure things are getting done right, but far better. And that's what I tell like my organization I work for, far be it better to get a fail from me than from them.
Right.
Because theirs takes a money hit. You know what I mean? And then money drives everything.
So it's kind of like, maybe this would be the wrong analogy, but if a business is as they're growing, they become an LLC, so they're kind of protected. Part 141 Part 145 kind of has that protection layer as well.
Yep, that's it.
Cool.
Similar to that.
Awesome. All right. So backtrack just a little bit too. I want to get a little bit more into both of your stories. So Six, I know that you said that you worked on Cobras and Hueys primarily. I'm a huge Bell helicopter fan. I grew up around the Bell 206 series, and Bell is. I'm biased. I think they're the best helicopter company in the world. But I do want to get your opinion on the Cobras and the Hueys, especially the modern ones too. What series did you work on? And, when you got out, what were the ones that were currently in?
So when I came through, I worked on the November series Hueys and the Whiskey series Cobras. The Whiskey series, they just had a mod done to it where they have like these, they had a couple of them. They had these exhaust shields on them to kind of deflect the exhaust fumes, but they realized like it was heating up the tails too much. So then they came up with this other one where it was like a turret exhaust where it pointed away from the tail. And those two were the most prominent when I was around. And it's same with the Hueys. Some of them had the automatic flight controls where it was all powered by very rudimentary avionics equipment to kind of assist with stability control. But we also had a good amount of them where they just still had the stabilization bars where it looked like a whole other hub with two giant ball weights, and then just kind of offset the main rotor as it's spinning. Those were actually kind of fun. I like those ones. Me personally, I like the Huey as far as maintainability, because when they work fantastic, and their maintenance was extremely low. But when you actually have to dive into it, that's when it kind of gets kind of hard, because this was made way back when troubleshooting wasn't really necessary, I would say.
That was Vietnam era stuff, right?
Yeah. So, or like Vietnam Desert Storm era stuff. So like everything still worked on mechanical linkage and springs and diaphragms. So there was like very little, if any, avionics equipment in it. So whenever there was a problem, it was almost instant. You can troubleshoot where it's coming from because it's giving you this much. and it was all mechanical friendly. And the Cobras, on the other hand, were very easy to do maintenance on because everything was so small, but it was out in the open. Like I can do engine changes on that thing for days, and it'll be done within a shift. That's how fast an engine change can happen on a Cobra. But then again, they're both very small to begin with. So, I mean, unless you're lacking something like parts or support equipment, it can usually be done within 2 or 3 shifts. As I was leaving, they just rolled into the Zulu style or the Zulu series Cobras, which is the 4-bladed. And then they had the Yankee style Hueys, also 4-bladed, for about 4 years before I left. Those ones, they're pretty awesome planes. I'm not gonna lie. Like the Hueys, they had such a massive power boost from having that extra oomph and the 4 main rotor blades. What I didn't like about those two was, since now everything's going avionics heavy, which is the trend for any organization within the aviation realm. Once it starts going aviation heavy or avionics heavy, then it starts turning into like, you have to be sort of an electrical engineer to understand how everything works and what ties into what. So your troubleshooting tree becomes a lot more challenging. Like something goes out, like, okay, it could be any number of these avionic systems over here. It's not cut and dry like the mechanical linkage and springs anymore. So that part was a bit of a challenge, but it really did open my eyes as far as, if you want to excel in being a mechanic, you need to start diving into other trades, specialties like, say, avionics, which not a lot of mechanics love to do. And it's also, like, say, with sheet metal and composite, especially composite, because almost nothing's made out of metal anymore. A good chunk of an aircraft is made of some form of composite, and understanding how they work and how to work with it is such a fundamental skill to have.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I do want to ask y'all too about this. Thanks for bringing up the avionics, like just the advanced features that are coming out. Have y'all seen the new concepts for some of these? Like for Bell, for instance, I know that they're coming out with, I forgot what the project is called, of course, at this very moment, but they literally, the entire dash panel in the cockpit is a screen. It's touch screen. It's so advanced and so cool looking, you know. What are some of y'all's thoughts on that? And is that actually, like, not that it's not real, but, you know, how realistic and far away are we as, you know, in terms of aviation technology today? How far away are we from actually implementing that in today's aircraft?
Well, it's already out there. I mean, it's there depending on where you work and what platform, but like if you look in some of your larger private jets, like your Gulfstream G650, your Challenger 5, 6, and 8000s, your Challenger 604s, they're all glass cockpits. Everything's touchscreen. Like in the Gulfstream, the G650, I mean, you go in there and once you start up as a mechanic, you just hit run diagnostics, and it's so smart, it'll tell you everything that's wrong with it. It just really helps. I mean, like the troubleshooting is almost done for you now. Or like on other platforms, you just plug in a laptop and you can find out what's wrong with it. And hell, you can even fix some of the stuff from there. You can adjust all your parameters. You can do flight control rigging from that. Even some of the systems, there's a big oil tank reservoir in the back of some of the larger private jets. And then from the cockpit, you can service each motor from that. And then all you have to do is service the main reservoir at some point whenever it gets low. But yeah, you can go a lot further between. It's there now. It's the way everything's going, like Six said. It's pretty nice. It's handy to help you out with doing a job, because like Six said, with the older airframes, man, you can be out there, I mean, just pinning out wires for days. And with the new style, it'll tell you exactly where there's a fault in the harness. You know what I mean? Yep. It's crazy. And then right now, even, you know, doing the pilot stuff, I mean, yeah, there's a backup manual, but shoot, everything's just point and click now, right? You taxi here, you set your waypoints and go. They'll even taxi on their own.
For sure. And, bringing that up too with the automation. So I know there's a huge push in the aviation industry for automate most industries, right? But especially with in our world, right, where there's a big push for just having aircraft that are non-piloted and just fully computerized. So obviously with being on the maintenance side of things, you can't really have a computer. Not that you can't really, but I don't even know how to ask it, but how is the automation process coming along in the aviation maintenance industry compared to like the push for non-piloted aircraft?
Well, it's just funny. We were talking about that the other day. All the maintainers will have like their own little R2D2 walking around. It's got all the manuals and stuff loaded to it, and they pull a toolbox. You're having conversations with it. We can't wait for that day, to be honest with you. It's going to be awesome.
It just it shoots a hologram of the schematic on the airframe, so you know exactly where a part is. Because how many times have we all looked at each other and said like, "Where the heck is this part? It's supposed to be right here. The manual says it's here, but it's not." Or it's behind like something where like you can't get your hand through, and then you start scratching your head like, "Well, how the hell am I supposed to get to this?" Like, well, what genius designed this? Why is this here? Like, there's a whole firewall or engine right here, and I have to like somehow like noodle my hand into it to get what I want.
Right. So y'all are kind of expecting that next phase of, pilots for now are needed, but A&Ps that's kind of more so a guaranteed job because, I don't think robots, maybe I'm wrong. But at least on all aspects of aviation maintenance, won't be fully automated.
Right. Yeah, I think we're quite a ways away from that aspect. When on the factory lines or whatever else, assembly lines, robots can do a good bit of it. But talking AOG, you're going out there just to replace a hydro pump or whatever else, or troubleshoot some electronics. Yeah, they can troubleshoot for you, but as for changing that specific part, I mean, that's crazy amounts of programming into a C3PO, essentially.
Right.
Right.
I think like as far as like automation is going to be happening for the mechanic side of the house, it's going to primarily be more on the logistics side of stuff than it is for like actual like mechanics or automated mechanics to fix things for you. Unless like you're talking like manufacturing where it's building it for you. And like as far as logistics concerned, I think they're already starting to come out with this. Like they have iPads or some kind of tablet system where you can pull up all your publications and all your specs, and then whenever you sign off for your work, it's already pre-plugged into the sign off. And then if there's any alerts or messages from say higher authority or your own maintenance control, even it just beams its way into your tablet, so you can get like the latest and greatest as to what's happening schedule wise for that aircraft. So you're not doing maintenance that you shouldn't. Or
even service bulletins, right? Instead of being the old way where you had to go research service bulletins prior to going out and working, you look through your logbook to make sure there's nothing there. That's kind of step one and safe for maintenance. But, you have to also research and see what service bulletins are there. Well, now they're auto plugged into the manual. So as you go and pull up your computer with the manuals, all that downloaded for that specific tail number, if you go do a certain task and there's a service bulletin alerted with it, I mean, it'll pop up and say must complete, at this interval.
Man, that is cool. That is awesome. So thanks for that. So MVP, I know, MPP.
MVP, you had it right.
Oh, my apologies. MVP. So
no worries.
we kind of hit on Six's background, so now I want to kind of backtrack to yours as well. So you were sitting on the couch watching some TV and an infomercial come up. Talk a little bit more about that, because now in today's, at least I think some of our audiences won't really understand that late night infomercial, advertising that we all saw back in the day.
Oh yeah. So it was late at night, come home, I think from my girlfriend's house or whatever. Again, Dad was harping on me about what I'm going to do, because everybody that I graduated with had already known what they were going to do, and keeping up with the Joneses, right? He didn't have anything to talk about with the other dads because I had decided what I was going to do. So I was watching TV. It's probably 11:30 at night, and that commercial came on for the school that I went to. I don't know if I should say the school's name or not. I mean, it wasn't a bad school. I just don't know if I should say it. But anyhow,
no worries.
Yeah, I saw that come on there, and that was the one and only time I ever saw that infomercial. Never saw it again. Even while I was at that school, I never saw that infomercial.
Wow.
But it was just like it was popped up, and I said, "Huh, I like planes," or at least thought I did, and still do. There's a love-hate relationship in there. I'm sure we all can agree on.
Yeah,
but yeah, so that next morning I woke up and I told my dad, I said, "Hey, I saw this last night." I said, "Why don't we go check it out?" So we jumped in the truck, drove over to where that school was, did a tour, and I said, "Yeah, this will work." I just made it on the spot, and I didn't know if it was for me or not. I said, "Yeah, it'll work to get Dad off my back," and so far it's worked.
Like it's definitely one of those where like you weren't sure that was going to be your passion, and then once you touched it, like, wow, this is amazing. I can't believe I haven't even remotely thought of this. And I'm sure every person who's ever been a pilot at some point have had that epiphany. I mean, it's for pilots, it's either if you've always wanted to do it or you never knew that you needed it. And I see this a lot when people go on their first fam ride. I think that's what it's mostly called, but
rides.
They'll get on like their first flight. They're just a passenger, just trying to see how it feels and all that. And then they get up in the air and they do these cool bangs to see the cool scenery, whatever time of the day it is. And then the acting pilot says, "You know what? Take controls. Just feel around, see how it feels like." And then as soon as their hand like touches the controls and then they go left or right, whatever, they're instantly in love and they're like, "Oh my God, this is it." Like they've reached the euphoric point of their life. Like, this is it. This is what I'm gonna do. I don't care how much it costs. I'm gonna be a pilot.
Yep.
And then they start researching to all the different steps you have to take to get there, and they're like, "Wow, this is a lot. This is a lot to do," which is again a big monumental testament to you as far as giving them the answers. Well, basically the answers on the far aim. Like, this is what you need to study to go for this. This is what you need to learn to do this. And like, how far do you want to take it? Do you want to be a private pilot? Do you want to be an instrument rated pilot? Do you want to be a CFII?
Multi-engine?
Yeah. Like there's so many different options. And then some of them are like, wow, I can do all
IFR,
of this.
VFR.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. And you know what got most of us into it, I think, too, right? Is like we all wanted to travel, but most of us are broke. So we go, well, how can I travel but get paid to do so? And really, aviation's an excellent, whether you're a maintainer or a pilot, especially a pilot. Man, you can get out there and see a whole slew of different places you never thought in your life you'd see.
Yeah, for sure. The opportunities are endless. So now this question is for both of you now. So, for on the pilot side of things, for training, typically if you go through, depending on what school you're in or, what, if you're on a fast track, some people can finish everything within a year. Other people, they take a couple years, but for A&P school, I know that it's more, it's way more detailed. There's a lot more that you have to know and you have to learn. And for some of the audience that is listening that is interested in A&P school, take them on a little, take them on a trip on what A&P school is like, and how not necessarily difficult, because anything that's new, there's always going to be a learning curve, but how difficult is it to get through A&P school?
So it's actually not that difficult. It's going to sound terrible to say this, and maybe some people get mad at me, but think of like your VOTEC school when you're in high school. It's the kids who didn't do well at normal high school and they sent them to the vocational school. At least that's how it was where I grew up. These are oftentimes you get guys in there and gals, but who weren't interested in books, but good with the hands and like the mechanical and wiring and all that kind of stuff. So you find yourself at A&P school, but it's not very hard. There's typically it's classroom work in the morning, and then depending on what school you go to, right? So most of them are 18 months straight through, and mine was 22 months just because you came out of it with an associate's degree. Whereas the other ones, you just come out with your license, your A&P. But I would, you got to do a little bit of math work, a little bit of writing, a little bit of, Gen Fam kind of things. Oh, we had to learn how to do to create blueprints like the old school way. Sit there and you had your graph paper on those big tables and your ruler and scales, and you're drawing everything out, and then you had to go and take what you designed and build it, kind of thing, which was kind of cool, but not overly difficult. Your instructors are all been in the industry 40 years or whatever, and they retired from the flight line to the teaching setting, which has been which was neat. I mean, some of those guys had really cool experience. But yeah, so in the States, specifically here in the United States, our schools are more, it's a license to work. You don't come out as a master of anything. It's literally a license to work. And that's how it was explained to me by one of my favorite instructors we had there. He goes, you guys know enough to be dangerous, and that's about it. And that's exactly what it is, right? You get all your experience, at least here in the States, and then once you're out, you go work somewhere, and you kind of work your way up the ranks a little bit, as Six and I talked about earlier. Now in Europe, they fall under EASA over there. It's the European Air and Space Administration, I think it's what it is. So under EASA, it's a lot longer of a process. So in the States, you're licensed to work. You can work helos, you can work fixed wing, you can work unmanned, you can work balloons, you can work Zeppelins, whatever you're into. But in EASA, you can only be type rated on 3 airframes at one time, and they'll send you through the whole school. And I think we had one of our listeners, Six, they said it took them 16 years. Yeah, to become fully type rated on 3 platforms, and about the time that they got type rated on 3. The first one they were type rated on, they pulled it from use, right? Mm-hmm. No longer a usable airframe. So now they had to start over on another third one and a newer airframe. Right. So over there, it takes a lot longer. Now, what's really cool here in the States is if you get a chance, like to go to Challenger School, Bombardier School, or Gulfstream School or whatever, they typically are like a month to 2 months long, but you will come out of that a master on that airframe. I mean, you will go through every system. You will learn all the stuff. You will learn how to use the softwares that they do to troubleshoot, and how to, load the different softwares, and how to load your different maps every 30 days and all that kind of stuff, how to do engine changes, and you'll even tear the motors apart, right? And you can do the same thing for engines in the States here, Pratt & Whitney School, which is really excellent. A really cool school to go to if you get the chance. So that's the baseline in Europe, but here in the States, you only get that if your employer deems you necessary to have that, which is, it's few and far between in the grand scheme of things. But for A&P school, not super hard to pass. I suggest anybody who goes into it, just put your nose to the grindstone and do it. One thing I wish I would have done now. So when I went through school, you had classroom work up until a certain point. And so you do classroom work in the morning, shop work in the afternoon. It gets to a point where you're strictly doing shop work. I wish I would have. So I just went through the A&P side. I went through the mechanic side, but I wish I would have gone back through the class side and got my FCC license. So that was another route you could do. An FCC is like an avionics certification. You learn how to disassemble radios and put them back together, and certain types of other avionics equipment. So you're certified to pull those apart on a bench, right? So if we're out there in the line troubleshooting and we've determined we got this box that's bad, well, you just pull the box and replace the box. But on the inside, the only thing that might be bad is a diode or whatever. And with that FCC, you can take it apart and actually just replace the diode, and thus saving that particular customer thousands of dollars in unit repair, right? Just replacing a 30-cent diode. That's one thing I wish I would have done. So that's one thing I have to say is, if whatever your school that you go to offers, do it all while you're in school, because it's once you're out and working, it's hard to pump the brakes and go back to school. Believe me, I know.
Most definitely. Like there's so many different ways to go about your A&P. You can go to A&P school. May not be ideal for most people, but you can join the military and get your experience that way. Or you can do what a lot of people are starting to do nowadays, is sign up for an apprenticeship with a airline or an aviation group organization. And as long as there's a licensed A&P there, you can have all your OJT sheets by the FAA, or if the company has their own set, get signed off for all those different tasks. I think usually an apprenticeship is about 2 to 3 years, depending on what it is. And then once you get all that signed off and done, you go to the FAA, schedule your A&P tests. There's about 9 of them. And once you pass them all, you get your A&P license. Now, most people are going to that route because some people just don't like school. Some people just don't like being in a classroom setting. They'd rather be 100% hands-on all the time, which is fine. And they cater to that. And the good part about going through the apprenticeship program is you're most likely going to be once you do get your A&P license, that's the type, model, airframe you're going to be working on. Like, for a fact, that's what you're going to be working on. And depending on what airline or what company it is, they may just hire you outright and start paying you as a licensed mechanic, because you've already done 2 to 3 years, sometimes 4 years on that apprenticeship for them anyway. There's so many different avenues to go about, but I think what gets missed a lot is a lot of people just see being an aircraft mechanic or an aircraft technician as just one of those dirty jobs, kind of like just waiting around in sewage water. Like, this is below me. This is not something I want to do. Everyone wants to focus above the wing than below the wing. And which is fine. If that's your dream, that's cool. Just letting everyone know, like, at some point in time, there's going to be more pilots than mechs. And I very rarely see a pilot turn wrenches on their own plane unless they own it outright. So when airlines start telling pilots to fix their own planes and pre-flight their own planes, you might see a lot more drawn out delays on the gate than it is already.
Right. That's awesome. So, yeah, I've been interested in A&P school too. It's just, exactly what MPP was saying was, just having the time to set aside and prioritize it. Right now it's for sure not ideal, but there was a gentleman that I interviewed, episode 3. His name's Brandon Melendez, and he's an A&P, and also he has all his certifications for being a pilot. He is currently flying the Learjet, and it's a super beneficial skill set to have for people that are looking to hire other individuals. And I didn't even think, what you just brought up with the airlines. One day that's probably going to be the case, is that, maybe they're going to have some sort of maintenance certificate that will allow them to properly pre-flight the aircraft for takeoff. So that's really interesting, tad bit of something that we, at least on the pilot side, need to think about and, more so be grateful for, because, being maintainers, I feel that it's not the glorified position that pilots are, but it's just as, if not even more so important in the realm of things.
Well, especially for big operations, right? You'll get pilots out there that'll scrub a revenue flight for a couple of bulbs being out in the cockpit, and they'll scrub the flight. They don't care. But if you're right there in the ramp, you're like, no, keep the engines running, stand by. You run out there, pull a couple of spares from stock or out of the flyaway kit, change a couple of, 63 83s or something like that, or 6380 peanut bulbs, really tiny things. You pop those out in 5 minutes and then have a good flight. You know what I mean? But otherwise, that flight would have been scrubbed and you'd have lost, let's say in the corporate realm, you could have been $20,000-$30,000 over a couple of 50-cent bulbs. So, a lot of companies, are realizing that maintenance can really save dollars rather than spend them. Yeah, we spend a lot of dollars, but there's so many more instances where, like you said, or imagine the aircrew now has to go out and buy off the pre-flight on their own jet before they go. Well, good luck getting any flights out on time.
Right. I'd imagine they would have to adjust the crew rest cycle like significantly, because I know for most organizations, like the air crew is not allowed to even roll into work no more like 14 hours before their shift is supposed to start, right? Or they're 14 hours from the land time. I think I got that mixed up, but
yeah, it's 14 hours from land time.
Right. So like if they showed up to work and it's like hour 15 before their land time, they're like, nope, you can't come in here. You need to leave. We didn't see you here, because that starts going into like crew rest regulations and stuff. Like we don't want that kind of legality. But if it ever came to the point where the pilots have to be their own mechanics or be their own pre-flighters, like I'd imagine that cycle would have to drastically change. And then this goes into like the mental health of the pilot themselves, where now we're extending our lead time by this much just to pre-flight the plane. Like now we're having more pressure on top of him or her, like having to fly the plane. Now they got to make sure that they prep the plane correctly to get it going. For smaller planes, like privately owned planes, that may not be such a problem. But like when you're talking airliners or heavies or something where like it's carrying multiple counts of people, I can see their mental health deteriorating like significantly.
Well, but think about this too, though, right? They're writing up on a pre-flight. They might write up 55 different things, but 20 of those are, within limits or can be MEL'd. They don't know that, though. They don't know what the MEL list. Well, they should know what the MEL list contains, but they might not research it at all. Or they might go, hey, this panel is missing 2 screws. Yeah, and the allowable limit for missing screws on that panel, because it's not structural, is 4. You get what I'm saying? So we're shutting things down for lack of knowledge, unless they're going to pump all those pilots through A&P school or whatever too. But that's a whole other added cost. You know what I mean?
So I will ask you this one. For pilots, when they go to their training, is there a part in their training that involves some type of mechanic familiarization?
No, not at all. Now I say that we're taught. So like, for instance, becoming a private pilot, the first certificate that you get, there is in the FAR-AIM a section of that specifically states the type of maintenance that the pilot can perform, which is changing a tire, changing the oil, super basic thing, like, similar to what car maintenance is, right? Nothing detailed though, but going through training, you are 100% focused on all characteristics of flight, not anything. They teach the mechanics of the airplane. You do need to know how the landing gear retracts, and with the hydraulics and the engine components, and the aerodynamics of the aircraft. But actually getting your hands dirty, no, there's not really to my knowledge anything that is covered.
See, now this may be a little bit big of a push, but I would say to kind of bridge the pilot mechanic gap is have like a familiarization, maybe, I don't know, like 2 weeks to a month, about like, okay, this is what the aircraft is. Here's what it entails as far as disassembly, reassembly, and installation, and all those things, just to give that extra bit of appreciation. Is like, this takes time. This sucks. This is very critical. And this comes from my time in the service. There are moments where I can tell when a pilot's brand new, because he walks up to the plane and he's completely lost. Like, he has no idea where we're at. And then kind of going to like what MVP was saying about not knowing what's tolerable and what's not. Like, they see something and they start pulling the 21 questions, and then they can really see the anxiety and panic in their eyes. I'm like, it's okay, man. Like, relax. Like, this is totally okay. This is totally fine. It was in the write-ups that you were supposed to screen before you walked out here. So,
yeah.
Just having that little bit of familiarization really helps, especially when it comes to diagnosing what the problem is. We run into this scenario a lot when aircrew or the mechanics, they can't translate to each other's issues. Like when a pilot comes down and says he has a problem and he says he experienced XYZ in flight, there's only so much we can diagnose on the ground when the aircraft is off. So you say XYZ, we're seeing ABC, and we're like, oh, this doesn't jive. And that's where you get those could not duplicate problems. And vice versa, when we're saying we're seeing ABC on the ground and you go up in the air and it's saying XYZ, like the translation gap is, it can be just like this little bunny hop, or it can be this monumental canyon. And it all really just depends on the familiarization between the pilot and the ground crew. But if there was, I would say if I could push anything, I would say to have some kind of familiarization where both of them can attend, or both of them can coexist and take together. Then that way it just makes it that much easier for each other to talk versus just, this is what the FAR says for XYZ. This is what the FAR says for ABC. And then you guys got to be the bridge that gets C to X.
Right.
Well, so one thing we started doing, like when we were in deployed settings, we get pilots who would over G or hard land, bounce it hard on landing, an airframe, and they would just be all nonchalant, like, "Oh, hey guys, by the way, we hard landed that one, or we had an over G, we hit the over G sensor or whatever." And like, so yeah, sucks to suck, but we'll catch you later. Like, sucks to suck, nothing. Get out in the hangar, and we would force them to come in the hangar and then do every bit of maintenance that was required or inspection that was required for an over G or a hard landing. And they're like, this fucking sucks. This is out. Like, yeah, you were going to go back to your room and chill, and we still got 10 more hours worth of work. So guess what, nerd? You know what I mean? And it did help. Like, some of them were like, damn, I didn't realize, like, I thought you guys would just have to quickly look at it and make sure nothing was, no, homie, we got to do a lot of stuff here to make sure that what you did didn't damage the airframe. Like, well, it didn't seem like it was that hard. But regardless, the inspection criteria states that if you hit that hard landing or over G sensor at all, that we have to do this. And so it did change their mindset a little bit, like, oh, okay, it's not just like my car where it seems like it's okay,
Right. Yeah. There's for sure a huge gap between pilots and maintainers. Unfortunately, I think, Six, what you were saying, that should be an absolute necessity during training. I think for both sides too, especially for pilots though, just because it brings more awareness to the actual work of, hey, this is what it takes to keep me flying and keep my paycheck coming in. So, it's something else that's interesting too that I find, or that I hear and read about. So everyone talks about pilot shortage this, pilot shortage that, and then there's a sidebar of, oh yeah, and aviation maintainers are going to be needed. People, I don't think it's realized that if the maintainer side of things doesn't grow as well, I hate to break it to you, but the pilot side of things won't grow either. So in the maintenance side of things, maybe y'all can talk about what y'all have been seeing from this the current shortage that we're kind of getting more into now.
A lot of overtime, tell you that.
Oh, nail on the head on that one. A lot of overtime. Like, just as much as there are not enough pilots to fill flights, there are not enough mechanics to make the flights happen. And we've all seen how having both shortages are just drastically affecting travel, affecting commercial flights, revenue, and movement of goods and stuff. You hit the nail on the head on that one. Like, without the mechanics or the technicians to maintain the planes and get them ready and get them scheduled to go, even if you had no pilot shortage, if every pilot was available and every single one of them was mentally healthy, physically healthy, emotionally healthy, there'll be nothing for them to do, because they'll have to start cutting pilots just to have enough to go handle the flights. And it's just sad to say, like, for both pilots and the mechanics, there's not enough people coming in. And you can speak to this best, where in order for you to get trained to be a pilot, there's so many steps you got to do, and you got to be on point with all that training. And then likewise, if you're having any issues, both physically, mentally, you know, that weighs a factor too. Like, what limits you to be in the air? How often can you be in the air? How many flights can you do back to back? And we've all seen where, like, so we're not as okay with just putting your head down and just grinding it out until the gears fall off. We're more conscious about how much we're able to handle. We're more conscious about what we're willing to handle. And we see it more nowadays where pilots, they're starting to break down from all the back-to-back flights. Likewise with the mechanics, the ones that stuck around or the ones that are still available, they're working back-to-back. And both of them, when the fatigue sets in, you start missing things, you start making easy mistakes. And those simple mistakes can be the big difference between landing softly and having a major mishap.
Right. For sure, gentlemen. So thanks for that. And, you know, as we continue going into the shortage, it'll be interesting to see some of the, I guess I don't want to say regulations quite yet, but how the industry decides to handle it. You know, as you were mentioning earlier, Six, there's apprenticeship programs that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. You know, I think that needs to be promoted more in the industry, especially as we as these delays and such are getting worse. And you know, I hate that. I don't like to, you know, have a negative connotation around the industry at all. You know, we all love aviation, but if it's something has to happen sooner rather than later, because everyone isn't really paying attention to the new technology that's coming out, the VTOL, right? So there's going to be a whole new plethora of, hey, we need pilots for these, and we need maintainers for this side of things. And when that gets launched as well, that's just going to deepen it even further.
Yes.
Well,
absolutely.
One thing that we've noticed, or at least that I've noticed, has been a trend is money is typically last spent on training. So as new things come out, they just kind of, you'll pick it up as you go along. Be like, it might be nice to send one or two of us to the training of this new, like the glass cockpits, for example. Just so a couple of us know what's going on, and we can train the rest. But some of us should probably go to the manufacturer's school for this, you know. But nobody wants to spend the money on that training. Most organizations, and then, you know, we were talking about earlier about aircrew having crew rest. Well, there's nothing that really exists. Well, excuse me. The FARs do have a very tiny little bit in there about maintainer crew rest, but it's not required. It's not hard followed by literally anybody that I've worked, because I've worked 220 hours every 2 weeks for a time, and nobody wants to talk about that. You know what I mean? That's a lot of hours to put in. And like Six said, you start getting those small mistakes. You know, I've slept in the back of the shop van waiting for parts to arrive on the ramp, you know, before and things like that. And I would be curious to see the FAA would update the regs to get a little more strict on that. Hey, if aircrew can't be around at if aircrew is 12 hours or whatever it is, then, you know, maintainers got to be at least hard at 14 or 15, something like that. Cause you know, so the safety aspect, well, the care crew can't be tired because it's the safety aspect. Yeah. Well, what about the guys keeping that SOB in the air too, you know?
Exactly.
Right. So I'd be curious to see if they're looking into that at all and thinking about changing it, you know?
I liked how you mentioned too about like the technology progressing, like, and this is absolutely true for the aviation specifically, because like what you see is cool now, within 2 to 3 years, it's obsolete. And I think that's just technology in general. But with the aviation side of the house, like we see it already with the training where like we get these new guys rolling in and all they know is the avionics equipment, or all they know is how to troubleshoot on this type of platform. And sometimes, and the training can be lagging in some aspects to some degree, but that's again going back to the whole how much money do we have to front for training. So we get some of these new guys and their knowledge gap from the time they finish school to the time they get to the line is so large, because we've already, by the time they finish their 18 to 24 months of school, we're already 5 to 10 years into the future with glass cockpits and fly-by-wire flight controls. And then like, whoa, I've never seen any of this stuff in school before, like ever. And it's definitely something that we all need to be ahead of the game on. Like, what's projected to change in the next couple years? We already know the avionics stuff, or the technology that runs the plane is going to be different, but what else? Right? Is our regulations going to change? Is our way of conducting maintenance or flights are going to change? And that's something we all need to continually adapt for. And then I'm thinking smarter as far as flying and maintaining. Because if we're just using the same formula over and over and over, all we're going to do is just burn each other out faster and then wear out our people and equipment faster.
Right. And, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yes, it is.
Yep. Man, there's a lot of insanity in the world.
For sure. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. We're going to have to do another episode. I feel like we barely scratched the surface. Six and MVP, if the listeners want to learn more about what y'all are doing, especially with y'all's podcast, Canceled for Maintenance, and if they have just maintenance questions in general, A&P questions, where are some good places for them to connect with y'all?
So you can go to our main website at cancelformaintenance.com. We have a contact form there if you want to email us some of your questions. That's one of the best ways. Or you can touch base with us on our social medias, like Facebook at Cancel for Maintenance, our Instagram at Canx, CANX for Maintenance Podcast, or on Twitter at CXMX Podcast. Instagram's probably been like our best avenue for approach besides emails, because with Facebook, there's a lot of extra fluff you got to go through. Like, you got to scroll through the text before you can find the picture, or you got to scroll through the whole screen to find the message me button, versus like Instagram is just in your face and it's right there. Whichever avenue is easiest for you, the listener, to get in touch with us, please do. And we're always available for listener feedback. If you need help with certain questions, or you want to understand the process better, we either ourselves know, or we can connect you with someone who does.
Yeah, and then do you have any show suggestions or topics you'd like us to cover? Please send those our way, and we'll do our best to get those incorporated in.
And for our listeners, where can we find more about the Leaders in Aviation podcast? And if, say, someone does want to become a pilot, how can they get their hands on your referenced FAR AIM manuals?
Yeah, for sure. So something that is kind of unique. So we were talking about pilot shortages and maintainer shortages. Well, there's actually a FAR AIM shortage this year as well in the 2022 version. So right now our products are limited, but people are more than welcome to come check us out, livelyaviation.com. It's, all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Just search Lively Aviation. Except for if you're wanting to listen to more of certain podcasts that we have, just launched a Instagram page, the Leaders of Aviation, and feel free to check us out there. We've got a couple of cool things coming out this year that we're currently working on. One that's going to enhance flight training. So yeah, just those are some of the places that you can connect with us. And, same thing of what Six and MVP were saying, any questions in regard to flight training. And, if I don't know, I for sure know someone that does know. So feel free to hit us up with questions. And if you have certain topics that you'd like to be covered too, happy to address those as well. And, so guys, thank you so much for today. I had a great time. Again, we're going to have to do another one because I have so many other questions, but for time, in terms of time limits and stuff, and I do have another podcast today, but thank you, gentlemen, for your time.
Most definitely.
I'm definitely be down to do another episode because I didn't even get to jump in and ask you questions on stuff on your end. So maybe the next go around, we'll do some focus on your stuff. I think that would be good.
Cool. Yeah, sounds great. So again, thanks for joining us today. And until next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
We'd like to take this time to thank our patrons for supporting our show and allowing us to continue to make episodes, maintain our gear, and create merch for all of our listeners, with special thanks to Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Ryan Freshour, Dan Schubert, Jenny Dignan, and the ladies of the Dick Talk and Mimosas podcast. Thank you all so much for your support and patronage. Visit our shop at cancelformaintenance.com and grab some swag to show off both your support for us and your prowess as an aircraft technician. If you have ideas for the show or you'd like to be a guest on the show, visit our contact us section and send us a line. We will do what we can to get your ideas or yourself on the show. You can also follow us on social media, such as on Facebook at Cancel for Maintenance, Instagram at Canx, that's CANX for Maintenance Podcast, or on Twitter at CXMX Podcast. Check out some of our affiliates like Rockwell Time, where they make both rugged and classy watches to fit your lifestyle. Use the code CX4MX and save 10% off your purchase. Support us on Patreon. Our patrons get exclusive perks such as access to our Discord, discounts and early access to merch, special patron-only episodes, and so much more. Thank you again so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.